A CEO was about to sign bankruptcy papers when a 6-year-old said, "Sir, a number is missing." The office was silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the occasional rustle of papers. Richard Hawthorne, the formidable CEO of Hawthorne Enterprises, sat alone at the massive mahogany desk that had once been a symbol of his power. Now, it felt more like a grave. The bankruptcy papers lay before him, cold and final. His hands, usually steady, trembled as he stared at the signatures awaiting his pen. Just last year, Richard had been on top of the world. His name adorned skyscrapers, his decisions dictated markets, and his charisma had inspired thousands. But a series of unfortunate investments and a global economic downturn had turned his empire into a house of cards. Every trusted advisor, every consultant, every board member had urged him to accept the inevitable. Today, he was supposed to sign the papers that would end not only his company but his career, his legacy. The office door opened quietly, and in tiptoed a small figure, her hair tied in two messy ponytails. She carried a backpack almost as big as her, and in her tiny hands she clutched a piece of paper. Her name was Emily Lawson, a 6-year-old girl who had been spending a few afternoons at the office with her mother, Richard's new executive assistant. Richard barely noticed her at first. He was too consumed by the weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. But then in the softest, most innocent voice he had ever heard, she said, "Sir, a number is missing." Richard looked up, startled. I beg your pardon?" he asked, his voice cracking from exhaustion. Emily held out her paper, a scribbled drawing of what looked like a calculator. "The numbers," she said seriously. "You forgot a number here. Look." Richard blinked. He leaned back, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Emily, this isn't a math problem. This is bankruptcy paperwork. There's nothing missing. It's all over." Emily's small hand reached for his. "No, sir, you can't just end it. Numbers matter. All numbers matter, even the tiny ones. You missed a number here." He felt a strange sensation, a mixture of amusement and confusion. How could this little girl possibly understand what was happening? And yet there was a spark in her eyes, a conviction so pure it cut through the fog of despair surrounding him. "Okay," he said quietly, "show me." She climbed onto the chair beside him, unrolling her drawing over the papers. Her finger landed on a small, almost invisible line, a digit overlooked in one of the calculations of his finances. Richard leaned in, squinting at the spreadsheets and formulas that had haunted him for weeks. And then he saw it. A small accounting error, one number was the difference between disaster and a possible lifeline. Richard's heart raced. Could it be? After weeks of despair, one tiny mistake, and suddenly a glimmer of hope emerged. He called his financial team immediately. They recalculated, they checked, double-checked, triple-checked. And there it was. With that missing number corrected, Hawthorne Enterprises was not bankrupt. Not yet. In fact, with a few adjustments, it might survive. Richard sank back into his chair, overwhelmed. This can't be real," he whispered. Emily, oblivious to the magnitude of what she had done, smiled brightly. "See, sir, numbers are important. Don't forget the little things." For the first time in months, Richard laughed. A real, heartfelt laugh, the kind that loosens the knots in your chest and reminds you that life is still full of possibility. He picked up Emily and hugged her tightly. "You saved more than just numbers, Emily. You saved hope." But as the days passed, Richard realized something even more profound. The mistake Emily had found was more than just numerical, it was a metaphor. The small, overlooked details in life, the acts of kindness, the moments of care and attention, they were what truly mattered. He started making changes, not just in his company, but in himself. He restructured the business with integrity, ensured jobs were saved, and began investing in programs to help struggling families and children, inspired by Emily's innocent courage. He became a CEO who didn't just run a company, but ran it with humanity. One evening, as Richard prepared to leave the office, Emily's mother came to retrieve her. "Emily, it's time to go," she said gently. Emily looked up at Richard. "Will you remember, sir?" "Always," he replied, kneeling down to her level. "Always." As she waved goodbye, Richard felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. The cold weight of failure had been replaced with something infinitely more powerful. The reminder that even in the darkest moments, a small voice, pure, innocent, and brave, can change everything. Richard realized that day that leadership wasn't about titles, money, or power. It was about listening, noticing, and valuing even the smallest contributions. And sometimes, salvation doesn't come from grand plans or brilliant strategies. It comes from a child who dares to speak the truth. Years later, Hawthorne Enterprises not only survived, it flourished. But Richard never forgot Emily. And whenever a tough decision loomed, he would ask himself, what would a 6-year-old see? What number am I missing? And every time he remembered that the smallest acts, the kindest words, and the purest hearts could save even the most lost of souls. Because sometimes, the world's biggest miracles come from the tiniest voices.